for this.
Same here.
Yeah. I got up at 6 this morning and did it this morning. There she goes. Is she trying?
I was going to do this morning, but I figured I should just wait for the group to hear everyone's opinion and stuff.
So much homework. Are you guys buried or are you guys doing okay right now in school?
I'm kind of buried, making it past, kind of.
I'm staying afloat.
Good. Good.
Yeah, I'm staying afloat, but I'm pretty busy. I just finished like a big section of a project that's due like this week, yesterday, like night. So that's why I couldn't meet yesterday, because I was just, like super busy with that.
Totally fine. The only reason it worked for me today is I didn't have to go into work, and so I've been just sitting at my computer all day getting stuff done. I still have another 4 or 5 hours to go, but it is what it is. Noe says she's having technical difficulties, so patient for just another minute. She might just have a reception issue over there in Hawaii, and we'll just be patient.
Yeah.
Yep, I've been up since 3 o'clock this morning.
Oh, you had to work at 4. That's right.
Yep.
What do you do at Target? Do you stock or?
Yeah, I unload the trucks and stock the shelves and work on sending packages out and reloading the truck.
Oh my gosh. So at Home Depot, they didn't have anybody to unload the semi with all the Christmas trees. So I got to do that last week. That was fun.
Oh, fun.
A little bit of appreciation for what you do, but holy moly, that's a lot of work.
It is.
Yeah, Christmas trees was actually fun. I actually enjoyed it. Even though it was cold and heavy, and that was still fun. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started because I don't want to do this all day. I got too much more homework to do. Why don't we offer an opening prayer? Does anybody want to volunteer? Christian, have you prayed yet?
I have, but I can do it.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Dear kind and gracious, loving Heavenly Father, we thank you for this wonderful day today, and we'd like to ask you to be in our group and to help us as we talk about this case, and to help us throughout all of our studies this week, to help us retain the things that we learn. And then we'd like to ask a blessing on all those right now that are going through difficult times, that you may be with them. And these things we humbly say in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
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 Amen. No, Lonnie, you made it.
Oh my gosh, this is just
Perfect
one
timing.
of those days.
We all get it. We get it. It's been crazy. We went ahead and just had prayer, so let's go ahead and get started. We're going to try to cruise through this because there's a lot of data to cover, and so we'll just barrel right through it. First of all, Noelani, did you get a chance to read everything?
Not the employee one, but I did read the story.
The case study. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, the employee one will be something that the rest of us are going to talk about because that's something that's going to be important to utilize in your or in our paper that we write. So,
yeah. All right.
Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. And I don't think necessarily everyone has to chime in. If one person wants to answer a question, we'll move on to the next one, unless somebody has something to add. We'll just cruise through this. So who wants to start by giving their opinion on what you think the root problems are that Barbara is facing in this new job?
Well, I think one of the root problem could stem from the issue of the employees and the work area for that emergency for this place was already was not even addressed in the beginning. So number one, she's coming into the situation, and the morale is just, to me, it's
Pretty low.
unable to work with, and it's so she has a big challenge there. Yeah.
Absolutely. Stephen, Christian, do you guys have anything to add on that? What are maybe some other things that you noticed that she's facing?
Well, personally, what I feel she's facing is a lot of, what's the word? A lot of flack from people. You know, they don't want to change. They see people as, you know, you work under me, so you do what I say, or, you know, hit the high road.
Yep. Yeah, she's definitely in a tough place.
Yeah, and nobody was willing to help the newer people out. The older ones kind of expected them to just, you know, chime in and just work like they like these people have been working. And you know, I think they had actually had a good opportunity to train these new people how to work the way they wanted to, but they didn't have that concept or that thinking.
No, and then instead of embracing it as an opportunity to train and to help,
Right.
they thought it was something that it made them resentful, that they weren't able to accomplish their assignments or duties with their patients. They were being stretched even more thin. So there wasn't a really clear alignment of responsibilities. And obviously there were some time issues as well. Just allocating time efficiently. Looks like there's some issues there too. Okay, good. So what do you think? How's she doing her first month?
Well,
if you were her boss, what would you think?
I think she addressed it. I mean, she started at a good spot. I think so. I think she, number one, did an off meeting and got them together to actually start them to address the issues, so she can kind of hear it from them first on what was happening.
Good.
You know, and how they felt. Right.
I agree. I think that was a step in the right direction to get him off site and get him talking. Right. Stephen, Christian, anything? What do you think? How do you think she's doing?
Compared to how everyone was acting, at least how it's portrayed in the thing, it seems like she's doing better than the average. So, because it seemed like everyone was kind of just doing their own thing, and she was at least trying to bring everyone kind of together or whatever. So,
that's a really good point.
Definitely A for effort, and she wasn't doing anything that was negative. So, I would say overall her performance would have to be positive.
That's a good point. So, I hadn't thought of that. She's actually taking the role as being a manager. I get the impression the guy or person, whoever was before, had kind of just not really been much of a manager, more of a do his thing and you do your thing. And and
yeah,
so she's definitely taking on her role very seriously. So good point, Stephen.
What I really enjoyed, I would point out as a manager, is at the end where she brought it together and asked, what do you guys want me to do? Do you want me to take these hours and cut them from you guys and hire somebody to do, you know, the office work, or should I bring one of you guys in to do it, kind of thing? I really like asking how she's trying to get the employees involved. So if they don't follow through, it's like, this is what we all decided on, guys. Why aren't we following through?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Or she did ask that.
Lashback.
Right.
Good point.
I do. I agree. She involved them so that everyone could take responsibility for the success or the failure of the department. In letting them know that she was going to be transparent and be involving them, as opposed to being more hierarchical. You know, I'm the boss, I'll do whatever I want to do and you have to live with it kind of a mentality. She was very much open to suggestions and input and wanting to have it be a team effort in the future. So good point. I like it. So what, from just a little bit that we read, what are some of the things that she's trying to change? And why is she trying to make those changes?
Well, she's trying to change the way that it's organized and the way that the teamwork works within the nursing. I forgot what the initials were, but because there was just no one was really leading. People were kind of just, there was no group work. There was no, I don't know how to say it, but they weren't working together at all.
Right, there was no unity maybe within the surgical
there was no unity.
Good.
And she was trying to bring everyone together and to make it a good work experience versus a really awful experience where everyone was really unhappy and the turnover rates were just ridiculous because people were just really unhappy. And she wanted, the whole reason she took the job was because she wanted a challenge, which I wasn't really sure if I agreed with that, like as being smart, but whatever. I guess it's not for us to decide.
Especially her mentor was like
for sure
crazy.
Like,
yeah, I think she should find a different hobby, but whatever. It's not for us to decide.
Thank goodness she was up for the challenge because I don't think anybody else was.
Yeah, very true.
It's timely for sure. It looks like somebody who they needed somebody to come in there and stir things up a bit. And the neat thing that I noticed is that she had a great mentor prior to. She'd been working in this facility through school and then now as a nurse, and gotten back and got her master's, and she had a great mentor. So she learned the skills. She got to see it in action. So now she gets to actually go and put it into practice. And I think because she already has a model to follow, that's going to help her, instead of recreating the wheel, right? Starting from scratch, figuring out how am I supposed to make this work? She's already had a really good model that she can just follow.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. So give me three obstacles that she's facing in affecting change with this group. So I'm going to let each one of you think of one. So who wants to start? Stephen?
3 obstacles.
Pick one. 3 obstacles to affecting change that she should anticipate. Maybe that's a better word.
She will face.
3 obstacles that she should anticipate.
Well, one obstacle I think she'll face is stubbornness and unwilling to change, because some of these people have been here for years and it's like, this is the way it is. This is the way it's going to stay. I don't care what you have to think.
And what do you think? And how should she handle that or address that, Stephen?
That's a tough one in general.
Yeah, because how would you?
Well, the way I would probably handle it is to go through the company to see if we can get some policies written or something on it.
Good.
Or go to their supervisor and say, hey, I know this person's really old-fashioned. This is the way they think the company should be ran. And personally, I feel it should be best coming from their superior if they're going to listen. And then get some of their input of what they're going to do to reach the requirements of the company now, and then follow up a few days later or a few weeks later, depending on what type of goal we set for them.
What about the book that we're reading and the chapters that we had to read this week? Do you see any correlation between Catherine and Barbara? I guess what Catherine's doing that potentially Barbara could do as well to be effective.
I haven't had a chance to read the book yet this week, so I
won't. But do you have points, Becky, on the book?
Yeah, there's a couple of things that I noticed. And that was, Catherine went in with a plan, and she had a lot of feedback that was negative. In fact, I don't think she had anybody who really liked her or wanted her there or liked her ideas, right? Except for the board of directors who brought her on. In fact, one of the board of directors. So she had a lot of kickback. The advantage that she had was that she had redeveloped and gone through this whole process other times with other companies. So she had a little bit of experience, actually a lot of experience, and she knew what to anticipate. Barbara's coming into this cold. She's not had to turn around a department. She's been really blessed to work in those departments that have already been very effective, harmonious, unified, and kind of have all these 4 drives that we talked about already in place. So I can see that the thing that I saw with Catherine was that she was very consistent, even though she got a lot of crap about every time they would meet offsite, she would say the same thing. We're smarter, we've got more money, we're better, we have better products, we have whatever, but we're third. Our competitors are above us. Why? And she said that every single time. And they got to the point where they were like, stop. And she said no. Because she knew what she knew what her mission was.
Right.
She knew what she wanted to accomplish, and she wanted to drive that home. And I think that Barbara has to do a lot of the same thing, just that constant repetition of this, going back to the same thing. They're gonna air their grievances. Let's go back to our what is our goal? What are we trying to accomplish? What do we want to see? What's our end goal, and how are we going to get there? So, a lot of parallels between these two women. And the contention and the really ugly environment that they're walking into to have to turn around. So, okay.
Yeah, you're right. With the resistance, that's what I was going to say that too. That's one of the obstacles that you would face, the resistance. Same thing as Stephen had said. Yeah, but I think one of the ways that she could turn it around is like how she did in the ending, or where she was asking them to come up with solutions to try to make this work. I mean, that to me, I think that was the start, that she could have done. Yeah, and see what these old timers could come up with. Yeah.
What do you think?
I don't know. Sorry. I don't know. I felt like the whole situation. I feel like because it mentions that the pay was going down because I'm guessing it was the beginning of a recession or whatever, and pay was going down. And I feel like that's going to make it really hard to get people to really care about their job, because most people, unlike her, most people work for a living, not because it's their hobby. Where she didn't really seem to be money motivated. She was doing it because this was what she wanted to do. This was like what she wanted to do on her free time or whatever. This seemed to be her main goal. So I feel like depending on how many people are just there working for money, it could be really hard if everyone's pay is getting lower and lower. People aren't going to want to improve if their pay is getting less and less. You know what I mean? And I felt like that could be a real struggle. One of the worst struggles, honestly, because I know if I was working there and it was a crappy environment and my pay is getting less, I don't know if I would really care to, I mean, maybe to a certain extent, but as much as to fulfill her vision, I just feel like at some point maybe people will improve a little bit, but then it'll kind of just be like, I'm not really getting paid enough to really care. So I feel like that was a big issue.
I've experienced that. I've seen people that way, and I felt that way too. I think that's common. The other thing too we have to realize is that during a recession is the worst time ever to try to jump ship and go somewhere else, because everybody else is experiencing the same loss.
That's a good point too. Yeah, they're all missing. Yeah, that's kind of like what happened.
Maybe you can use that mentality, which is really valid, Christian. If she can use that as, okay, it's inefficient for us to try to go somewhere else. The situation here is not ideal. Let's make it ideal. Let's keep our jobs. This is when we come out of this recession, we will have, our pay will come back, our bonuses will come back. I don't think their pay was docked, but they weren't hiring anymore because they had to their budget, which enters in another dynamic, and that is they're working more hours. They're doing the job of 2 or 3 people. And I don't know if you guys have experienced that. That's hard. You're just run ragged. And so their stress levels higher. And in the surgical units are already, anything about hospital, they're already highly stressful anyway. And then when you add on people, like they talked about, looks like 2 RNs had left the 6 months prior to her joining the unit, and 3 RNs. I mean, so they lost 5 RNs in a short amount of time. So the existing staff was burdened for sure.
Yeah, it definitely mentions not price, but cuts in the budget that the hospital had.
Right.
You're right.
So they did have less help, which means that they're doing more work.
Yeah, absolutely.
And doing more work or spending more time working doesn't make that work more efficient or effective.
That's a good point.
That's something I notice a lot with sometimes people will just try to spend more time because they think that time will be just as efficient, but it ends up being less and less efficient the more time because people get burnout. And so I could see that also being an issue.
And that's also
everyone being burnt out
in the medical field. I mean, these people work 10, 12-hour shifts on a regular basis.
I mean, they're probably burnt out before all this happened, let alone after.
It's not easy being a nurse or working in the medical field, especially in a hospital setting. If you work in a doctor's office, totally different. But in a medical setting, it's tough.
Especially in emergency and surgery.
It's really hard. If you're new, you do graves and you work really long hours. And if you notice, the very first paragraph Barbara had started work at 6:30 that morning, and it was 10 p.m. and she was going to be there another 2 hours. So she was pulling an 18-hour day herself. Right. So she can also empathize with where they're at. It's not an ideal situation. What can we do to make this better? Good points, you guys. Now, one of the things that we really need to do is develop an action plan. If you were Barbara, what would you do? And I'm going to pull up my paper because I went ahead and finished mine, and I got a couple ideas that were a little bit different that I didn't initially think of, but as I started writing and started thinking, I was like, well, wait a minute, what about this too? So. Okay.
I mean, definitely needing a way to motivate people, I think, is probably the most important thing. Because if she can motivate them, right, then it's possible. If she can't, then it's just not going to happen. So.
There's a really good quote in one of the books that I read about motivation, and because I felt the same way you did. Talk amongst yourselves, think of some other things. I'm going to go get that quote. It was really interesting. Motivate people, which is the key thing
here. I guess.
What's up?
I guess I would definitely let the employees know the situation on, the budget, and then I guess I would try to, like she started, asking them for suggestions on how they could work around this, and then how we can make things easier. I like the way she suggested either bringing in somebody else to help with the paperwork so that the nurses didn't have to do that. They could focus on other things. I think I'd also try to do maybe a training program for the newer nurses, asking if maybe the older nurses would mentor some of these new. Yeah,
that'd be probably really helpful for them, because it didn't seem that anyone wanted to.
Sorry, I had my sticky notes and I took them all off because I was done with my paper. Darn it. Basically, the mindset of this, this is one of the books. If you haven't read it already, you probably will read it for one of your books.
Great. Yep.
One of your classes. It's really good, and it's one that I refer to a lot when these kind of things come up, and it's as my kind of my standard. That and then this one too has also been really awesome. But this is interesting. Spending time and energy trying to motivate people is a waste of effort. The real question is not how do we motivate our people. If you have the right people, they will be self-motivated. The key is to not demotivate them. One of the primary ways to demotivate people is to ignore the brutal facts of reality. So that was good for me, Christian, because I kind of had the same thought. Just motivate him, get him excited, come in and do the rah cheerleader thing. And then I was reading this and I was like, no, don't do that. Don't do that at all. And so it led me on a completely different protocol for my paper, in that actually the best thing, according to to this book and also to the subsequent article that we were asked to read was to be brutally honest and to be very transparent and to allow everyone the opportunity to feel safe sharing all their thoughts. Like in the meeting she held, there were three nurses that stood up and voiced grievances very articulately, negatively, but articulately. They got it out, and to just encourage that atmosphere of safety. You can come here, you can be heard, and you can be appreciated, and then we're going to take some action. So that was part of this employee motivation thing, which was, which one?
Okay, let's see.
The drive to defend. Hold on. So at any rate, if I could recommend anything, it's just go through these 4 things that are in here and use those as your outline for your paper, because every single thing it's in the motivation article is perfect for what she should do to help get her staff on track.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what other things did you guys, would you have her do to help turn this thing around?
Yeah, I liked the quote you shared, but one thing that stood out to me was it said if you have the right people, and I'm not sure if they did have the right people, so maybe even just trying to find the right people, maybe they need some better leadership positions or I don't know, just a couple people that are motivated to then motivate everyone else, right? Because if some people are doing well, then everyone else probably will follow suit. So maybe finding...
That's good.
Yeah, I don't know.
I had a similar thought, Christian. So let me tell you how I kind of came to that, what I did in that. So, because in a recession, it's the worst time ever to get rid of people, unless they're completely toxic, right? So in the book, The 7 Dysfunctions of a Team, there was that Mikey girl, and she was just toxic. She wasn't happy there, and she was affecting the team. And so at the end of this week's reading, we find that she was asked to consider stepping down and moving on. So I think you're right, Christian, and a lot of times it is necessary to say, you are toxic. This isn't working for either of us. Let's just peacefully part ways. But then as I was reading and trying to gather data for this paper, I thought, I'm not necessarily sure that the nurses that are on staff are not the right people. But they
it doesn't really say.
They have had the crappiest environment. They have had lousy management. And as a result, they've just been doing the best they could. So they're very defensive. They're very accusatory. They have to watch their back and cover themselves all the time. And so what was my objective? There's a few things that so one of the things that I recommended was to establish a hierarchy and set up an org chart. Because you have women, or nurses, I shouldn't say women, that's not fair, or nurses who have been there for 25, 30 years, they should be given responsibilities of leadership, and they should be trained to be leaders. There are other nurses who have just been there for a short time, and they're just learning the ropes, and they're asking lots of questions. And so to set up a hierarchy or an org chart stating, okay, this is, Barbara's at the top, and then she has her board or her staff leaders, right? And they have individual responsibilities that they're over, and they have individual people that they're over. So maybe one person is in charge completely with the new pool nurses, right? The ones that they're just pulling off to shifts that really don't have jack squat, right? One leader is over them, and then another leader is over, scheduling and paperwork and the admin staff, and she works with the nurses on getting that done. Another one's over whatever. So to create an org chart, defining roles more succinctly, and also giving those seasoned nurses some leadership responsibility, which does all kinds of things to motivate people. When they're like, oh, I'm needed, I'm important, my opinion matters, I have value within this company. That's one of the employee motivation things that we talked about in this article. I think it was Drive to Acquire. So an org chart, so if I were her, I would promote several nurses as representatives to sit on a management board, which would allow the concerns, ideas be shared openly on a regular basis. This would also have the twofold effect of creating a culture that promotes teamwork, collaboration, openness, and friendship, as well as opportunities for the nurses to learn leadership skills and thereby feel they are contributing to the greater good of the department. Am I reading too fast?
No, that totally makes sense.
And then this would also lend to accountability instead of favoritism in leadership, because the staff would have to collaborate on how to implement programs and make staffing decisions together. And the seasoned nurses would be able to contribute quite a bit and feel like they were important. And also the younger ones would be able to feel like they could go to their immediate supervisor and be heard, and then that would go to the staff meeting or the department meeting or whatever and be, taken care of. Another thing that I recommended was an operations manual. And a lot of companies don't have these, but those that do are highly effective. And I'm surprised more and more companies don't have them. I was actually a part of making the operations manual for 2 different companies, and it's a lot of work, but basically it's a step-by-step procedural manual that takes everything into account, from how to okay, for a nurse is how to do intake, what are the procedures. You take the patient, you put this XYZ on their chart, you push their wheelchair into the room, you help them get, literally like step by step. So
right.
If somebody walking in knew nothing, she could look at that sheet, patient intake, and she would know exactly what to do. Every single step, there'd be no question. So she wouldn't have to go running to a senior nurse and say, what do I do after I put them in their bed? Do I just leave? Right? She would have an org chart. She would have a procedural manual that would say, and so it would be her responsibility in any of her off time to read through and get really familiar with the policies and procedures and know what's in gosh, I'm talking too fast. I'm too tired, you guys. How are we going to do this? Anyway, how to create her, what's the word I'm looking for? An operations manual, sorry. So that would also help the newbies, and it would also give Barbara something to utilize for employee performance reviews. And evaluations.
Yeah, that's a good. I'm wondering if they even had one from the beginning, before she even came.
And I think that's why the younger staff is like, what do I do? What do I do next? What does this mean? Why do we do this? Well, I was over at Mercy General last week and they did it this way. Well, here at GCU or whatever it's called, we do it this way. Not just EMU.
GSU.
Because every company, every division, every department does things differently for their own reasons. And if it needs to be changed, then they can do that. But it would also give the seasoned nurses the opportunity to sit down and say, this is what we've done and this is what works. And they can actually help create that manual, which gives them a feeling of satisfaction and need. And then they can help implement things. And Barbara's not in charge of recreating the wheel and doing all the work. She's spreading it out, and everybody feels a little bit better, like, okay, now I feel empowered. So then the younger gal who was so frustrated at the end, Megan, she would feel empowered because if she wasn't able to get in touch with somebody, she could just go grab the ops manual and, oh, I just need to do this. Okay, I've got it covered or whatever. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. You just went in more into detail.
I enjoyed it. You explained your thoughts really well.
Really well. Good.
Okay, so those are a couple of things that I noticed. And as far as performance reviews, same. What I said about performance reviews was it was obvious that expectations needed to be clearly stated and monitored. An org chart operations manual would be the start in clarifying opportunities for improvement and also rewards, but that she would also need to work closely with the hospital executive team to determine what had been done in the past and what could be expected going forward, because the hospital executive staff might say, we can't give you anything else. And it's like, fine, then we'll just work with what we got. Or they might say, well, actually, we can give you one of our intake girls at the ER because she's she's only working part-time. She wants more hours. We can't give them to her. So why doesn't she do ER for 4 hours, and then she can come up to your department for 4 hours and do all of your, your admin stuff or whatever. So just opening that relationship with the executive team so that she can also find out what she can do, what she can't do, where her hands are tied, and then go back to her staff and say, okay, we got nothing. Let's see what we can do with what we got. Or they gave us an inch, so we're going to take it and we're going to maximize that inch to the best of our ability. I really think she has a good team. I just think it's been years and years of just being beaten down.
Yeah. That's a good point.
And the points that you made, I think, would help her be successful.
Okay, okay, so I'm not the only one. What other action plans would you guys put into place to help turn things around for this department?
I know that the budgets are not great, but I think they need help. I think there's just too much stuff that they're doing. I mean, the fact that she's putting in like an 18-hour day. I mean, if she had less to do, she'd be more effective on leading the team. And I feel like maybe not help for each person or anything, but I do think there could be some help hired if they had a budget. But it doesn't really tell us any information about that, so it's really hard to. I don't know. It's kind of hard to pick that as
it is tough
because it doesn't really give us any info.
I think you bring up a good point, and that is the budget might be unworkable, right? They may just say, you used to have $500,000 and now you have $250,000, and you're gonna have to live. That's with your salaries, that's with your material supplies, scheduling, everything else, and that may be set in stone, but it's
maybe
kind of like looking at your budget,
or something.
Right? You look at your budget and you're like, I'm poor and we can't go out to eat. Well, if you realign your budget and you say, okay, what can we get rid of so we kind of have to just organize your budget.
Review. Yeah.
She's going to need to organize her staff, their responsibilities, their time, their schedules, and as opposed to just doing helter-skelter, just plugging in holes constantly.
Yeah.
It's ineffective. It wastes time. It wastes energy. And if there's a protocol, then there's no waste. Definitely. With time, with patient care. And then the nurses can focus on patient care because they know that someone's taking care of admin, or someone's taking care of stocking the supply whatever. Someone's taking care of scheduling the next surgery and prepping the room and whatever all those things are that are needed in a surgical unit. So
right. Yeah, definitely. I think that they would need to. I would review the budget. Yeah, see where the expenses are going and try to see if you can realign it. And
maybe
cut where it needs to be cut, or allocate it somewhere else.
Right. Maybe there's superfluous inventory somewhere. And they keep buying the same thing, and it just keeps going in some supply closet. Right. And she opens it up and it's like, why do we have 15,000 gowns when we only need to keep 200 on stock or on in supply at any given time? So I agree. I think it's just kind of reevaluate where they're at and see where they can cut without hurting the department. And
yeah, I think that's a really good point. So if they can make their workloads more efficient and maybe even hire an extra person or two, that'll make it a lot easier on everyone.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
And you're right, Christian. Maybe we have to just let go of somebody if they're just dead weight and they're miserable and they're just dragging their feet and they don't want to be there and they call in all the time and they're grumpy when they're there. Then it's time for Barbara to sit down with her, kind of like Catherine did, and just say, you're not happy and you're not contributing. And you know what? I can write you a letter of recommendation. It's time for you to go somewhere else. And then that income could be utilized, like you said, to bring in somebody else, bring in
somebody that could work. Yeah.
I have one question for the medical field. Is there like an intern for medicals? Like, is that a thing? Because they could even just some like helpers, kind of like intern. I don't know anything about the medical field, so it's hard to say.
So she said she already has 8 PCAs, patient care assistants. So those are kind of, to get into the medical field, you have to finish your program first. They don't do internships as much.
Okay.
If you're a doctor, they do rotations and stuff, and you do intern. But to go be an MA, you don't get to be hired as an MA until you've completed all of your regulations and your testing.
Okay.
To be a PA, to be a doctor, an MD, you have to complete everything before you can actually go work in that environment. They used to have candy stripers back in like the 60s and 70s. They don't have those anymore. Maybe that's why. I don't know. But medical is a little bit tricky. You can't have somebody who's dying and not have somebody there who knows what to do about it.
Qualified.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I would know.
Yeah. I was just wondering because I have a friend who
that's a good point.
He's like a intern at a dentist thing.
Yeah.
He interns for like a dentist. I mean, he's going to be like a doctor or something, but he's still an intern at a dentist. I don't know. Anyway, so I was just like, maybe it's the same. So I don't know.
Maybe. Well, that's a good point. I don't know. I've never worked in a hospital before.
No.
Maybe there are some sort of programs where people can shadow others. This might be
For experience, yeah.
right, just for experience, to see how patient care works, to see how the workflow is at a hospital versus a doctor's office or a clinic or something. Yeah.
I was just thinking if that existed, I guess I'll have to do some research into it. I was just thinking if that existed, I might be able to get rid of some of the other work that, I mean, we don't really know what their workflow's like, but maybe it could get rid of some of the other paperwork or whatever.
That's true. And especially since they're at a university, it's very possible that you've got maybe a finance major or some other major who just needs to get in some work. I don't know, some intern work, and you can just put them, can sit down and do charts or whatever.
Yeah.
Good point.
Yeah. Good point.
That's a really good point.
That would help.
Yeah.
That's a great.
Yeah, I have to look into that.
That's a really, I hadn't thought of that one. Nice job thinking outside the box. I like it. Really good. That might be actually really, really wise under the circumstances, them being at a university hospital. Good call. Really good.
Agreed.
Anybody else have any ideas of a game plan or action plan for her to embrace in this endeavor of hers?
I like what we came up with already.
Same here. I can't think of anything else.
Yeah, I think we did a good job covering it. We can move on,
Okay. Let's see. I have a lot more ideas, but I am not going to share my whole paper with you guys.
Oh, too bad. Yeah.
This paper kicked my rear. It was very long. And then
careful, it can't be over 1,500 words.
1,494. Oh my gosh.
Oh,
are you serious?
I am.
Oh
serious.
my gosh! I really. Oh.
were you having to delete stuff?
Oh. This one was brutal for me. I was just like, well, then we have to cover this, and we have to. And I kept thinking, well, I didn't cover all 4 points in the employee motivation thing, and I'm like, well, I got it. Then okay, how can she motivate him by doing this? Because in the article, employee motivation, it talked about how you can work on one area, but it's highly ineffective unless you work on all 4 areas. And I'm thinking, oh, great. So has my case study covered all 4 areas so that she can be effective and have a higher margin of success than just improving 1 or 2, right? So I was like, oh, great.
Wait, what 4 areas?
How to fulfill the drives and motivate employees.
What's that?
Kristen had asked what area?
Yeah, what are the 4 areas?
Okay, so there are 4 areas.
So,
on the first page, it's on the right-hand side, it says there are 4. The drives are acquire, bond, comprehend, and defend. And then they're actually broken down on pages 2 and 3 a little more extensively on what that means and how a manager would motivate their staff using those 4 things. And then on page 5, it talked about how unproductive it is if you just work on one, how you really need to work on all 4, because you can have somebody who's really good at acquire, the reward system, but they're lousy at job performance, or the number 4, performance and management resource allocation. So I was like, oh, okay. So then the morale actually goes down because they feel like they're being cheated. Oh, well, he's nice on me. He's good there, but he's lousy here. So that there's a trust issue. So if you're across the board on all 4 of these things, then the trust goes up, the productivity goes up, the motivation goes up. It's really pretty. It's a good little article. Pretty interesting. So anyway, that's why my paper ended up being a lot longer than I thought. So anyway, just as a tidbit, he recommended that I utilize subject heading, or how do you say it? So I'll pass it on to you guys because it was one of his recommendations. And so if you, when you do it, hold on, what did you say?
Wait.
Section headings to alert the reader of transitions would improve the format of a case study, is what he told me. And because there's so many on this one, just as an idea, you might just say, so she's going to work, okay, drive to acquire would be a subject heading, and then a paragraph about how she's going to motivate through the drive to acquire. And then the next one, drive to bond. And this is how you would recommend, encourage that.
Oh, okay.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. So instead of just just paragraph to paragraph, put a little like titles and sections.
Yeah, and I've never done that before, and he recommended that I do that after he's already graded my paper. I already sent it, turned it in, he graded it already, but I never thought about that. But my paper would have been a lot easier to understand and to flow if I would have
done it. Yeah.
Okay. So just as
sorry.
If you guys
I love doing that, but I feel like teachers always get mad at me, so I never do it. I actually love doing that. Yeah, it's funny.
Make it easier, huh?
Yeah. I have a hard time doing it without doing that. So I kind of do it and then kind of delete them and then kind of combine them, kind of. That's how I usually do it. So like on my draft or whatever. So
there you go.
Sweet.
So there you go. That's what he recommended. Maybe take that advice for yourselves, and that will help you guys do a better paper. And it might actually make it easier. It would have made it easier for me if I would have been like, I'm just going to cover these 4 things. I'm going to state my issue, go through these 4 things, have a concluding paragraph, and be done. I probably would have not had 1,500 words on this paper. So, yeah, FYI.
Thank you. That's good information. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Is there anything else that you think that we need to discuss or that we would recommend that she do to help improve her department?
I think we covered it.
We aced it. Not bad for last minute thrown together, huh?
Yeah.
Yep. Thank you very much.
I got a lot to think about before I start. So thank you, guys.
Thank you. This was good. I'm glad we got to get together. So next week, we're definitely not getting together. And then
what?
Next week, no meeting.
No meeting. No group meeting. It's an individual project.
Okay. Do we need to turn this group meeting in?
Yes.
Okay.
So who's recording this? Steven,
I'm recording it right now. I was just confused with what you sent. It's like, wait a second, we don't have to meet? But you're talking about next week.
Okay, so you know how there's like lesson 11 and week 12 and that whole thing? I think there's some sort of misunderstanding or miscommunication in the outline with the class. Remember we had that?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why my calendar had that no meet this week.
Where are we?
Yeah.
Yeah, I get that in every class.
Don't coincide. And I think, and because the weeks are not typical Monday through Friday, this class has them like, they're different, right? Everything culminates mostly today, right? And
Tuesday, right.
So technically the week starts last week, which never happens for me, but
yeah. Me too.
Okay. So
I've been trying to, but
I know.
yeah.
I'm going to work ahead, but I'm so buried with everything else in my class.
Right.
Oh, man.
So anyway, I did mention it to him. I did show him and send him a copy of the leadership board, which specifically said lesson 11, you're not meeting. But what it meant was
week 11.
It's week 11 or week 12. Or, I don't
Something.
know. It's off.
Week 11, lesson 12, something like that.
Something like that. Exactly.
I know. I was like, what? Oh, goodness. How are you folks doing on your project? Do we have that other individual project, yeah, that we have to do?
Yeah, it's good. It's crazy.
Oh.
Every single day.
Yeah. Yeah. At least 2 hours a week. I'm just
At least.
trying to finish this up. Oh,
Yep.
gosh. Okay.
Yeah, it's a little intense, but it's good. It's good for me. I'm flossing almost every day now.
And that's a good goal, you know?
Oh my gosh.
Well, we're almost done. Just think about it, man. Yeah. We're on lesson 11, right?
3 weeks left.
3 weeks left. Oh, my goodness. Hang in there, guys.
We can do this.
Yeah.
I know we can. We're almost done.
Thank you so much.
Okay. So on lesson week 13. Okay. Sounds good.
All right. Have a good one.
Guys.
Hey,
Thank
guys.
you.
Have a great week, and we'll talk
Thank
to
you,
you
you
later.
too. Thank you.
Okay.
Bye.
See you
Bye.
guys.